Hello! Welcome back. My name is Bianca. Today we are going to work on making this teapot. You can use this for a plethora of costume or parties, like an Alice in Wonderland party. But today I'm going to use that as my Greg costume from Over the Garden Wall. So let's grab our supplies and get started. I dipped my ripped newspaper in my glue mixture and began wrapping my ball. I didn't wrap it all the way to the top because I knew it was going to have an opening, and the bottom because I didn't want it to be a round bottom. But just covered it in one layer and then worked on my second. For the bottom of my teapot, I use this polyfoam caulk saver. I cut one of these in half and I wrapped it around the bottom of my ball. This is to give it that extra lip that the teapot may have at the very bottom. So what I did was rip it to size and grab some masking tape and tape this on the ball. And I made sure to cover all of it. I was only going to do a section, but I figure if I cover it all with this masking tape, it would be easier to glue the tape over it instead of the smoothness of the foam. And it worked out at the end, I think. And deflating the ball a little bit because I didn't want the roundness at the bottom. I wanted it to be a little bit flat. So I deflated it a little bit, flipped it upside down, and began covering the bottom of the ball and the section that I had just taped with the foam. This was starting my third layer of covering the ball. But then I remembered I have to do the handle and the spout before I finish this third layer. So to make my handle, I grabbed some paper and began scrunching it up. So I literally just scrunched up some paper into the shape of a handle that I liked and grabbed some masking tape and wrapped that all the way around. This was my first little bit of it. I didn't really like how it turned out, so I ended up grabbing some more paper to make it a little bit thicker. And once I liked that shape, I began wrapping this entire handle in masking tape and still trying to form it into the shape of the handle. You can see me doing that here, trying to shape it and see how much I need to bend it and if I can do that with the tape. That was my handle, and here is my spout. For the spout, I rolled up a little ball of paper and put that in some more paper and did the same thing and scrunching this up into the shape of a spout that I was happy with. The spout was a little bit more difficult because it has that little ball at the bottom and it kind of thins out at the top, but once I figured out the shape that I liked, I grabbed some more masking tape and wrapped this piece all the way around. Now to attach the pieces. To be honest, I needed a little help from my glue gun because I tried doing it with the masking tape, but it just wasn't working. So I cheated, sorry. And I used a little bit of glue on the ends of my handle and a little bit on the end of my spout. You can also see here that the spout wasn't really the shape that I really was happy with. I basically filled it up a little bit more with paper to make it a smoother transition. It felt like it was a big ball and then a tiny stick at the top. So I tried to work some magic with some extra paper. Once I did that, I glued a little bit at the bottom onto the ball and taped this around, but then I realized that I glued it off center. So I had to take this apart and do it again. I added extra tape where there was paper showing, and this is what it ended up looking like. I also did another little edit to the spout. I bent the tip a little bit so it'll look more like the spout that I was thinking of, and I think it looks pretty good. The next thing I had to do was to cover this in a third layer. So to cover this section of the spout, you can see that I started with big pieces, but then I'm going to slowly work with smaller pieces. Because there's so many curves, I would recommend using smaller ones than bigger ones. It just makes it a lot easier to have smoother edges. I was a little impatient, so you could see that I was starting off with some big ones. I should have used smaller ones, so do as I say, not as I do. And that tip goes for the handle as well. Just use smaller pieces. It'll make a smoother teapot. And this is going super fast because I'm not that fast, but once I am done covering it, this is what the third layer looks like. I also had my supervisor looking at this, so I wanted to show you a little bit of a close-up on the spout. You can kind of see that there are some edges of the paper that are lumpy and bumpy, and that's because I used bigger pieces of paper, but the smaller ones should avoid that, but I think my supervisor and I approve. Once that third layer was dry, I went outside and began covering it with the fourth and final layer. After the fourth layer, I deflated the ball, and I'll let Past Bianca tell you what's next.
Yay! Now to spray paint.
I used some silver metallic paint to spray paint my teapot. Now that I have my teapot, all I have to do is cut this section off and level it out. Alright, I think that looks pretty good. That'll be fine. So now the thing that I have to do is figure out how I'm gonna put this on my head. I think it looks super cute. The only issue and problem I knew I was gonna have this problem was trying to figure out how I'm gonna keep this on my head. I had originally thought of creating kind of like a hat base, and I'll show you what that looks like. So I created this base here, and you can see it's just like a piece of cardboard around and then 2 pieces of cardboard across, and basically it fits around my head. So what I wanted to do was kind of put this in there so that it'll fit like a hat. But if you see, his teapot sits right on top of his head. It doesn't sit like a hat, so I had to get rid of this idea. I think I'm just going to maybe put a few holes here and put a strap at the bottom. I think that's just gonna be what's best for it to sit up here, but either way, I think it's looking pretty cute. So let me do that really quick so we can see if it works out. I grabbed some elastic and I put that on the teapot, but I didn't do the holes. I ended up just using the glue gun. I just love the glue gun. It's just quicker. So I put that on my teapot, and that ended up being really tight. So I thought about maybe using some yarn instead and having it tie into a bow around my neck, but that was way too floppy. So I ended up grabbing another piece of elastic that wasn't going to choke me, and I put that on the teapot. But the thing I'm showing you here is that the edges really, really hurt. The edge hurt my head a little bit when I was wearing it with that really tight elastic. So I looked through my stash and I found some gray fabric that I wrapped around the lip. Is that what it's called? The top section? I basically put some fabric on top of the teapot to make sure that it didn't hurt my head when I wore it. So you could do that if you'd like. It's optional. I think it's a good idea because it didn't hurt my head. But once I finish that, I just have to get dressed and show you the final look. Alright, so that's how I made my teapot. There are a few things that I had thought about doing additionally prior to painting it, and that was putting kind of like this all-purpose clay. I cannot remember what it's called, but I'll put the image of it here because I did use that before on my Twilight Zone mask. That would have probably made it a little bit smoother and just sanded it down before I started doing that. But I was worried that that could probably make it a little bit heavy on my head or on anybody's head, so you could try it out, see how it works, and if you do, always let me know and share it with us on Instagram. Please tell me in the comments how you're going to be using your teapot, if it's going to be for an over the garden wall or a different type of costume. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please make sure to give it a like and consider subscribing to see more videos like this one. I also have a Ko-fi account where you can leave me a virtual tip if you please. If you make it, please, please, please share it with me on Instagram. I always love seeing your makes. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you all next time.